I'm your host, Jordan Lavin. Welcome to All Good Things Start With You. All right.
All right.
I think of Dr. Tom Rifai. I think of the famous Negroes lyrics, walk it like I talk it. He is truly a doctor of healthy lifestyle habits, preventative disease, and just happens to be the founder of and CEO of Reality Beats Science. He is the Harvard Medical School Lifestyle Medicine, continuing medical education online course director for type 2 diabetes prevention, nutrition, and metabolic syndrome, among many other admirable and inspiring ways to instill health. I think it's safe to say that Dr. Rafai is a health guru. Welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to have you.
Coach Jordan, it is an honor to be here with you, and it's an honor to see you again.
So let's talk about some of the most what's the most one of the most important things people need to understand when we're talking about health. And the way I look at it is there's two different definitions of health and wellness, and I think people get confused of those two words. And I always want to get a better understanding of what health actually means, especially when you're dealing with reality meets science. But let's talk a little bit about that, please.
Yes, I mean, for sure, there's a physiological state of health, but really the psychological state of health, without those two, mind, body, essentially, that really are in unison. But if we want to think about them separately, they really have to be thought of as a unit. But there are people I have seen who are physiologically healthy, and they are really not very psychologically healthy. And in all honesty, I mean, I know people who are very well psychologically and who we may find physiological issues, whether it's prediabetes and things that are coming down the pike, that are yet not ready for lifestyle change. And that is a challenging scenario where you and I would know, oh, these things are coming down the pike, and how great that you feel now is something that could be at risk, without sounding judgmental and, of course, not wanting to take over their journey. It's their journey. We can only, as coaches, present evidence and facts and risk, and then they have to judge for themselves what they're ready for.
Correct. I actually agree with that, because I've tried, through the years, even though I'm generally very fit, I'm healthy and all of that stuff, but I've always tried different types of health regimens, and I hate using the word diet because I think the word diet sets people up for failure. In a sense, I'm trying to remove that word so that we can get a better picture of what really needs to happen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Our relationship with food, if you will, or nutrition, two words I agree with you I prefer to use than diet, which implies some sort of restriction and often sets up deprivation psychology and makes people want something more, is really an important psychological mindset to take on. Our relationship with food is the issue, and dieting is typically not associated with a healthy relationship with food. I mean, it's a word in the dictionary, and I respect that it's in Merriam-Webster dictionary, but in the common understanding of the word, it means I am on something for short term, it's going to be restricted, and it doesn't imply a long-term plan. It just implies a short-term tactic rather than a lifestyle strategy. And for me, as you know, we've discussed privately, Coach Jordan, I am one who has been challenged with binge eating disorder, and I almost lost my life to binge eating disorder, and I lost my youngest brother to binge eating. And I can tell you that it never helped him when anybody sent him a message that you can't eat this or you can't eat that. I actually, to make it common language for everyone, and it's also an open secret that I like the band Kiss. I think Kiss is a great rock band. And beyond the music, they one of their co-founders, not the one that gets all the attention, that's of course Gene Simmons, but Paul Stanley, who was born deaf in one ear. He had a malformation microtia, which made his ear look like a cauliflower, so he was deaf on one side. and his sister was a full-blown schizophrenic, and there was a lot of challenges he was faced with. And incidentally, by the way, never found happiness despite physiologically being healthy. He wasn't psychologically healthy into his 40s, but he put a 2-minute video together when he was interviewed in Hawaii that I thought was just this beautiful example of discipline without extremism. I mean, he comes out talking about, yes, of course, as you get older, you have to have some discipline. He mentions discipline again, and he talks about how he goes to exercise with his wife, so he has more accountability in groups. But then he mentioned in a conversation with a doctor about his cholesterol, and the doctor said, you can never eat ice cream again. And I will not tell you what his answer is, only to tell you it was very practical. And I don't think that doctor is his doctor anymore. Let's put it that way. It's called 2 minutes. I'm sorry. It's Paul Stanley on Growing Old on YouTube. It's just 2 minutes. I recommend it for anyone who wants to understand the concept of reality meets science and discipline without extremism, or what I call the flexitarian philosophy of life.
I think that's very important because when we're talking about food, obviously the relationship, but we hear so many things, we read things on the internet, books and whatnot, and we have all this information. There is so much noise out there, and you have to understand how to filter through the noise and find what actually works for that individual. And I find so many people go through these cycles throughout their life, and it takes them so long to find that one thing. And I hate to say it's kind of unfortunate that happens, but I keep seeing the same trend over and over and over again. And as I've said this many times, it's up to that individual to make that decision for themselves, to take whatever guidance they receive and take that guidance and do something with it. I think that's where the reality meets science kind of comes into play.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The individualization of the approach, which you've done through your center and we do through our program, is key. You can only be a navigator, not a pilot. And in fact, the different types of ways of eating can be differentiated from what you eat. I mean, somebody can do intermittent fasting with the standard American diet, or what we call the SAD, right? The standard American diet, SAD, or you can do it with, based on plant predominant fruits, vegetables, etc. And you really have to find out what works for you. All I can say is that for myself, in the midst of this, what we call, cacophony of confusion, there's so many messages, whether it's the rhythm and the way you eat, or it's what type of foods to eat, very low fat, very low carb, no gluten, no oil, this, that. And at the end of the day, really there is no single food choice at any single point in time that's in and of itself a mistake. As I like to joke often, it's not cake on your birthday, it's cake on everyone's birthday. that may be an issue. But by all means, when you have an indulgency, as rare as it may be relative to the average American, when you do, please enjoy it. Let's not get caught up in words like guilt and cheat. Those don't really end up with a healthy relationship with food. Now, I would argue that there's the concept that you are what you eat, and I would say that's something that's pretty much stands true. But you also eat what surrounds you. So you are what you eat, but you eat what surrounds you. So if you want to get something down to what we call the 5% fun zone, while it's around you 45% of the time that you spend your day in the house, a big box of Oreo cookies, which I've eaten way too many in my life.
That's me. I got the Oreos. Not in the house.
That's right.
By the way, I got to my parents, and my mom always texts me and says, "Hey, I found these really cool new flavor of Oreos. Do you want to try them?" I'm like, "Okay, sure."
Yeah, but please leave them at your house, Mom. I don't want to bring them into my house, because that's like bringing a wolf into the house, pretending it's a dog, and then blaming the wolf when the wolf bites you. So yeah, there's a difference between not in life, which is a diet, versus not in house, which is a lifestyle change. And if you want it that bad, go to Mom's or go out, enjoy it. But maybe you want to rethink whether you're surrounding yourself with temptation constantly, because willpower is a bit overrated by itself alone. It's a tactic. Maybe you can grow your willpower a little bit, but it's more about how to manage the willpower you're born with.
Exactly. It's like for me, in our house, my wife and I, if you look at our refrigerator, there is zero, I'm not kidding, zero processed food in that refrigerator and even in the freezer. And my wife is very good about that. She's vegan, gluten free, dairy free, all that stuff. So she's very limited on what she can actually have because she has Hashimoto's. So she's learned through the years what works and what doesn't work. And the benefit of that is I've learned how to eat better myself. And from that, I'm very appreciative of that. So a lot of times I feel like it's all about your surroundings. And I find that a lot of people have families, especially with kids, have that struggle because you have that one person who really wants to make that change, but they're struggling because they have to take care of their kids or their husband. And my question to you is, how do you balance that when you're working with clients?
That is a great question. And I'm sitting here first thinking about how I balance that working out with my own family. And but one thing I really love that you mentioned is that you and your wife are on the same page. There is a study called the English Longitudinal Study of Aging, in which it was quite clear that when life partners, spouses or otherwise, together make a lifestyle change, the odds of success, whether it's physical activity, smoking cessation, or weight loss, always do better. I really didn't think we needed a study for that. I mean, it's pretty self-evident when you have a saboteur versus a supporter, but nevertheless, the evidence is clear. Same with myself. Before I was married, I gave my wife a chance to run like mad. I admitted to her first that I was a binge eater before I went public. And I said, I can have about anything in my life, but in my face is a different story. So if you want to run, and I hope you don't run, you can go now, but I want to be honest with you. And so we have a very good relationship like that in the house as well. I have a 3-year-old, almost 4 now. He's almost 4, and same with my daughter. She's 5, but almost 6. And we have a very dedicated part of the cupboard for their food. So I can't really fully restrict them. That wouldn't be fair. I mean, they are metabolic machines. They're different than us, but all the family knows that it's not possible for me to have that food interspersed everywhere. So we said, okay, this is the dedicated cupboard. When otherwise you don't have a supportive environment like that, which is a real challenge that I've had with a number of clients, you end up with some very difficult situations in which you must guide the client in terms of assertiveness, not aggressive discussion, because that will just blow up. If you just tell someone you're trying to kill me with all that junk food, bringing up the ice cream to the bedroom at night, you're unlikely to get a good result. At the same time, if you're passive and you just allow it to happen and you don't set your boundaries, that's not good as well. So coming up with a line that expresses not a want, but a need in a respectful way. And I say practice it because I'd like you to spend several times in the mirror, if you will, that Hollywood line, fake it till you make it. Practice the line, get comfortable with it. Like Frank Sinatra used to say when he was asked why he doesn't get nervous in front of 50,000 people singing, he said, of course I get nervous. I just know my lines. So practice it and then engage in this is my idea. What do you suggest? Engage the partner in a way that they feel respected and that they have a buy-in. Now, that doesn't always work, but it works a lot. But I'll be honest with you, Coach Jordan, I've even seen it sometimes where the challenge to health is so high and the lack of willingness to go forward is so high that sometimes it ends up in people actually having to split. And that's not common, but I want to just emphasize that health is that serious to some people that they have had that happen. We see it after bariatric surgery, for instance, when people's lives really dramatically change. And of course, you see it when people are recovering from drugs and they just have to make a decision. I have to, I can't hang out with the same heroin circle. It might be a good idea if someone's challenged with alcoholism, maybe not such a great idea to meet your friends at the bar. Those are self-evident. What we don't seem to be willing to accept is that, some foods are some foods, which we might put in quotes because I'm not so sure after 7 PhDs designed it, which I'm pretty darn sure was the case with Kit Kats, because I have a PhD in the anatomy of a Kit Kat. which I earned from Mom University, because when we grew up, we had pound boxes of Kit Kats everywhere. So I know the entire anatomy of a Kit Kat. But nevertheless, those types of foods trigger such a hyper-palatable dopamine reaction in the brain that we have to sometimes think of them like drugs. Now, I'm careful not to say zero tolerance, because there is a difference between, in my opinion, a Kit Kat and heroin. Now, it may not be dramatically different, but we are so inundated with this, what we sometimes call calorie-rich, refined, and highly processed foods, which, if you make it into an acronym, CRRAHP, is pronounced crap. But anyway,
I like that.
so that, and it's everywhere. I don't even want to mention a specific business, because it's everywhere. It doesn't matter.
There's so much stuff out there that, like, the advertisements and the newspapers and everything. It's just, when I think about, like, my grandparents, for example, from what I was told, my grandparents would tell me, they ate, regular beef, potatoes, curds, everything was all cooked and everything. There weren't a lot of processed foods. And then, my parents and their generation, processed foods, microwave foods started coming into play. And you saw the obesity rate just kind of skyrocket. I just saw something this morning that the obesity rate, like in 1995, was still high, but not nearly as high as it is now. I think
That's
it's around 35 or 36% in the United States or something. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere around there, and that's just very interesting to me, because I'm not blaming the media, but there's just so many easy temptations. You mentioned, Kit Kats and Oreos. Don't get me wrong, I eat very healthy, but I love my chocolate. Okay.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I'm very with you that to be realistic, everyone needs what I call a 5% fun zone. And that's not a 5% guilt zone. It's not a 5% cheat zone. We actually want you to have really high level of mindfulness and enjoy your non-negotiables. But we just discussed probably the best way to keep it down to that dull roar is not to have it constantly around you. But at the same time, when you have it, why spend your time being guilty about it? Enjoy that moment. You'll find it actually, the memory lasts longer, and you probably will say, well, you can say no thank you a number of times in between the next one, because you say, you know what, I really enjoyed it recently enough. Thank you, no thanks. And then know that you can always have it again. It's not going to be verboten, never have. Right. That being said, though, the approach of balance is, I think, yet to be really realized. And the reason I think that this concept called flexitarianism is gaining so much popularity among the scientific community, which is just the word vegetarian mixed with flexible. I mean, flexitarian is not a complicated word. It's just that it sounds nicer than semi-vegetarian. But when you ask for most people if they're willing to move towards more plants, and they're given an option of absolutely zero animal plant pure, which is fine. I think it's great if somebody's willing to go there, versus, hey, how about becoming really plant rich? But when you want, every once in a while, you can have over 70% of Americans surveyed said, yes, I would go with that type of flexitarian approach. And that approach is now up to the U.S. News and World Report every year, as you know. And here comes this word again, Coach Jordan, best diets. Let's just replace the word with lifestyle. But nevertheless, Mediterranean is still number one. And I would say it's more because it's sexy than necessarily anything else. But flexitarian is now tied with the so-called DASH diet, or the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. And it's tied for number one for weight loss. And the only real reason is that it's practical. It definitely moves people towards less processed, more plant-predominant foods, but says, no, you can have a release valve on your pressure cooker. We don't have to have you live your life in a pressure cooker without a release valve, because that'll just blow up in your face. Flexitarian is the type of approach, that discipline without extremism, that tends to work for most people that I've seen as patients or now as coaching clients.
Yeah, I appreciate that approach, because when you talk about flexitarian, to me, it's just a way to help people focus more on just trying to eat more real foods and adding more color to their diet. and still being able to have a few of the other, meats and whatnot, that type of thing. It's flexible enough so you don't have. My problem is everybody says, I'm going to go cold turkey on X, Y, Z. As you know, that's a very direct way to fall off the bandwagon.
Yeah, its blessing is its curse. It's very simple, and so for short term, it's like coming out of the gate at the Boston Marathon sprinting. Oh, you won the first 100 yards of the Boston Marathon. Good for you. Does anybody care who won the first 100 yards of the Boston Marathon? Does anyone even know who won the first 100 yards of the? Nobody cares because it's a long-term race. So as far as a kickstart goes, I have no problem with temporary. Detoxing and going absolute is for a short period, but you have to have a plan that's going to accommodate real world or finds where reality meets science. And that's where that kind of concept of 5% fun zone works. I'll give you an example. I had and I still stay in touch with him, but a patient who I saw, we'll leave his full name out, but Larry, who we brought back with a number of very successful long-term lifestyle changes and weight maintainers. Now, he happened to be maintaining 100-pound weight loss. And I say that it was a side effect. But when we asked of the 5 keys, mind matters or psychology, nutrition, activity, environments, including food and social environment, and accountability, which one is the most impactful? More than half said mind matters, and many, including him, said it was the concept of the 5% fun zone or non-negotiable. So I said, okay, Larry, what are you talking about? I said, well, when I have to talk in his voice. Well, Doc, when I met you asked me what my non-negotiables were. And I said, okay. He said, I told you it was a Coney dog. I said, okay, Larry, that's interesting. So he goes, well, you didn't beat me over the head with a stick about it. I said, well, no, Larry, I just asked you what your non-negotiables are. Why would I start negotiating your non-negotiables? He said, I haven't had one in 4 years because of that. I said, really? How did that work? He goes, well, you told me I could have one. So I kept saying, maybe next week, maybe next week, maybe next week. And next thing I knew, it was 4 years. Then he said this, but I could tell you, Doc, if you told me I couldn't have a Coney dog, and he's pointing at me the whole time, he's pointing at me. I tell you, Doc, if you told me I couldn't have one, I would have had 10 the first week. My blood pressure would have been up. My weight wouldn't have fallen. I would have lied to you about it and told you your diet sucks. And I said, wow, okay. So nobody really wants to be told that they can't do something. So whenever I meet with someone, as far as that key of nutrition, and it's blended with mind matters, I just ask them, what are your non-negotiables? Put them right on the line, because if you want to ask me what the definition of the 5% fun zone or moderation is, it's whatever amount you need of whatever to not want to kill me until the next time I see you. I can't tell you how much that is. You have to tell me. Yeah. So there you go.
I think that is phenomenal. I mean, there's no explanation for that, but the fact that you have that rapport with that patient is phenomenal. I think it's great.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, it gives them agency. It's realistic because you can't take over someone's journey. At best, you can be an invited navigator. They're still the pilot. And if you try to take over that steering wheel, you're going to get some elbows. It usually doesn't work very well. I mean, rarely will people come in and say, just tell me what to do. Okay, for that once in a while person that wants a drill sergeant, I mean, I'll accommodate it, but it has to be a very open invitation for anything like that. And I'll be skeptical, like, how long do I have to hold on to the wheel? I really don't want to have to hold on to the wheel very long here, okay?
So that's the thing, like, you've studied, researched so much information, and you've obviously been able to develop these 5 keys. And what's been the most successful for yourself or for the client? You obviously gave that one example, but I kind of want to take it a little bit further to understand, like, we're raised, in this capacity of everybody's raised in different ways, right? There's so many different ways everybody's raised, but it seems like it takes so much time for someone to realize that they're ready. I guess my question is, are people coming to you, most people, are they coming to you when they're at the breaking point, or are people coming to you from a preventative measure standpoint?
I hate to say it, but it is sometimes the latter, but usually it's the former, because when people have that learning moment, when they've just had a heart attack, or they've seen that their A1C, their blood sugar numbers at high levels of prediabetes, or they're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, or their weight is so high that they're facing a potential knee replacement. Those are moments that reality really comes to face them, and the science is no longer just bubbling underneath. It's really right there. It's in their face. I have seen people who have had histories of being adopted, not really knowing, and therefore they want to do everything they can to prevent, or they're just wise because they've seen their parents having dementia or cancer or something that just instills an indirect, almost, but direct kind of fear in a way, because they're caretakers and they just don't want to have anything to do with that unless necessary. But people do have to be ready. So in fact, in 2017, the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force came out with a guideline that essentially emphasized the criteria for someone to be referred for intensive lifestyle modification is based on their readiness for change. And they were imploring doctors, even if they have no metabolic problems now and they want to prevent, please refer them, because the odds of becoming a metabolic case in the United States is so high that it's better to take the opportunity that they're ready now to push to prevention. Now, in all honesty, if I know you recall, there's an American Heart Association Simple 7 criteria for metabolic health, having to do with our what we eat, physical activity, smoking, weight, our cholesterol, our blood sugar, and our blood pressure. Only 1%, in fact, it's slightly less, but 1% of Americans meet the ideal for all 7 categories. Which means everybody, no matter what our weight is, I mean, only 70% of us are overweight or obese. That means that most everyone who's normal weight probably has something they could do. That's one of the reasons why I try to be careful about discussing weight. In terms of couples, often, well, I don't have the weight problem, he does or she does. And you end up finding out that other person has high blood pressure. Well, I hate to say it, but the person you're saying has the problem with their weight, and sometimes this happens, has normal blood pressure. And believe me, sir, ma'am, blood pressure is the biggest metabolic issue that you could possibly have. And yes, weight might make it worse, but it's really driven by low potassium, low magnesium, high sodium, and we don't see that in people. We don't see that. We don't have people walking outside with their blood pressure stamped on their forehead. We see a person's weight. And so I get a little bit wary about making weight too important. It is important. The way I view weight is it's an important part of the solar system. It's like Mars. It's not the sun. It's not the Earth. It's an important planet. We can't disregard it, but it's got to be put in context, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Keep going. Keep going.
What I think you were also getting at is maybe, what are some of the highlights of the 5 keys that supersede a culture or an age or an ethnicity? And if I were to give you some highlights, although we talked about some of the items like the non-negotiable, 5% fun zone, in other words, in Mind Matters, other than asking someone what their non-negotiables are, the real first question I ask is, why are you here? And I appreciate that, you might want to get off medications or the scale. Those aren't really whys. I'm going to keep peeling back. Oh, you want to get lighter? Why? Until I've heard things from Doc. Okay, let me just be honest with you. I want to be able to sit next to my granddaughter at Cedar Point next year in the roller coaster. Or, Doc, this is the truth. I didn't make this one up. Doc, how do I put this? Well, let's just say it's an erectile dysfunction issue. I want my parts to work till I'm 90. Hey, okay, sounds good to me. Or, Doc, I need to go backpacking and kayaking and go to Denali twice a year. Without those 1 week where I'm by myself or with my brother, my whole family relationship, my work relationship, and my knee's about to go out. I can't lose those trips. It really got to keep peeling back. What is your why? Mine is simple. I'm almost 53. I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. It's not rocket science for me. What my why, 2 of my biggest whys are obviously my children, But whatever that person's why is needs to be identified. And what you end up finding is once they know it, and it might not be your first meeting, so that one about the erectile dysfunction, it took him a couple months to figure it out. He came back and he said, doc, I'm thinking about it. I love my kids, but I just got divorced, and I'll let you fill in the rest of the blanks. And this is really what I find motivates me. Okay, I can't determine your why. That's very personal to you, but you want to find that, because you'll find it's like a lighthouse in the fog. At times you're challenged, you'll remember what your why is, and you'll probably won't stay off a center of gravity as long, because that why will pull you like a magnetic force better. In terms of nutrition, I think to me, the coolest thing in nutrition science that is not nearly discussed enough is this concept of having people know that you can feel full on less calories, that there's this science of water-rich foods, that the weight of food seems to be much more correlated with fullness and satiety than other things. Obviously, there's chewing and mouthfeel and taste. And I'm not denying any of that. But one of the biggest things is that we typically need somewhere around, at least 2 and up to 3 pounds. Some of us larger eaters may need more than 3 pounds of food per day. And it's a lot easier to change what you eat than how much you eat. And foods range from about 100, sometimes less than 100 calories per pound, up to 4,000 calories per pound. So just getting more water-rich foods, fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, peas, cooked 100% whole grains. And I'm not saying never eat something dry and crunchy. Obviously, we've been talking this whole time about it's just a ratio. You eat 1,000 to 1,500 times a year. We're not talking about making those choices every single time you eat. But if you can shift that ratio up, you can actually find that people don't have to be particularly hungry any more than normal. You can eat when hungry. Please don't wait until you're starving. We can talk about how that isn't good for binging. But eat when you're hungry, mild to moderately hungry. Stop when you're comfortably full as often as you can. And you shift your calorie density so that you're eating more water-rich foods that have foods full of water from roots in the ground, fruits and vegetables, or cooking, beans, lentils, peas, and 100% whole grains. Or, there's some high water-rich foods in the animal world, yogurts and egg whites and fish and chicken breast and things that haven't been deep fried. And you mix and match these things, and it really isn't complicated at all. It's very simple, which is to be distinguished from easy, because simple isn't necessarily easy. Right. If you or I were stuck with our friend, for some reason, stuck under a car, it wouldn't be very complicated. We got to find 7 or 8 other strong guys and lift the damn car. Right. I don't need a physics formula or a PhD for that. Is it easy? No. Is it complicated? Nope. Not complicated. Better lift the damn car. That said, in the physical activity world, you and I both love exercise. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I say you want to use the term addicted. I'm pretty much addicted to exercise. My mind matters can't live without some exercise. But I think one of the biggest areas in much of the United States that isn't yet exercising, because we have like less than a quarter of people even coming close to the American Heart Association recommendations, is simply to just talk about non-exercise activity time. The data is starting to really build that all movement counts, and you should really probably seal the deal with exercise. But if you're not moving at all, I'll make a deal with you just about walking to the second or third water fountain, or parking further at the grocery store, or taking the stairs. And no, if you're on the 8th floor, it's okay. Take the elevator to the 6th or 7th floor. You can start there. You don't have to go up 8 floors. Everyone wants to find a reason not to do something. Every little bit counts. Even the American Diabetes Association is now recommending in their physical activity guidelines that for every 30-minute, in fact, I better start now because we're at the 30-minute point. So I would say if you're watching live, Coach Jordan and I are martyring ourselves for you, and we're sitting, but I would like you to stand at this moment. So I'm going to kick my legs like the American Diabetes Association recommended as one way. Every 30 minutes, they recommend at least 5 minutes of anything. They said even kicking your legs. Muscle seems to be a very, what have you done for me lately tissue. Yes. When it comes to blood sugar, your exercise might help your blood pressure and your bones and your muscle and your mood. But if you exercise and you sit for 8 hours straight, you may not be getting maximum benefit from movement. So become what I call a neat freak, or non-exercise activity time. Now, you and I know that the technical last letter represents the word thermogenesis. But when I say non-exercise activity thermogenesis to people, they go, what are you talking about? So I just replace the word with time, because it's where reality meets science. Non-exercise activity time. Environment, we already talked about. You are what you eat, but you eat what surrounds you. And then for accountability, this is where I think that programs like, CrossFit and communities and a coach, but also even just tracking your steps or your blood pressure or your weight, anything. You don't have to overdo it. Pick something. But accountability is really that deal sealer for people who are just starting to change their lifestyle. And when it comes to, let me give you an example why accountability is so important. The National Weight Control Registry, which is a group of thousands of Americans who've maintained weight loss for long periods, which is not too common, but it's common enough. They've got thousands of people, and they found that it typically takes at least 2 years of maintenance before the odds of long-term success start to really increase. In that 2 years is where that accountability can really be helpful. And yes, eventually you can rely more on internal accountability than external, but for a while it helps, just like a young tree. You know how you put those sandbags at the bottom of the young tree so that it doesn't get blown by the wind until it grows into the oak tree, and then it can stand by itself. That's kind of the analogy for accountability. You want to have that support. And what you bring is I call it compassionate accountability. You bring that, I bring that. Accountability that's rough, and I think we used the term earlier, or maybe that was off air, I don't remember, but drill sergeant, it might work for some people, but mostly people want support that's compassionate and non-judgmental. So those are some tips in the 5, from mind matters to nutrition, activity, environment, and accountability.
I love it. The best thing, I really appreciate the accountability, because we always hear, I want to bring a friend, I want to do this, and the more you do things together, the easier it becomes. And I actually agree with the 2-year mark, where you push in there, where you've had that accountability. Now you see the results, you're comfortable with the results, you're comfortable with the decisions that are being made, and then you're able to kind of understand it and be able to do it on your own type of thing. So it's exactly, I've been in the fitness industry for a long time, so I agree with that statement right there. That's right in line with everything that I've seen with it.
Yeah, you're right. They get more comfortable with, where they can, in the beginning, where they find their food is a challenge, and eventually it becomes easy. Oh, now I know where this, that, and the other thing is. I sometimes have to do I'll be honest, I have to sometimes do a tour of 2 to 3 different grocery stores to get everything I want, but I don't mind. I have once a week, I go out and it's worth it to me. Or what kind of fitness wear that they really like, what kind of shoes they're really comfortable in. All those kind of things that are a challenge in the beginning, as they stack on, become easier and easier, becomes more autopilot. And then there's the fact that, we have these landmark moments once a year. And one of the biggest one, of course, is our holidays, from Christmas, not just Christmas, Hanukkah. Let's go back to actually Halloween, or sometimes I call it Halloweek, because it seems like it's supposed to be a day, but it seems like it starts a week before. But Halloweek or Halloween into Thanksgiving, into Hanukkah, Christmas, and that whole season is a challenge by itself, and it's almost a stress test. And once they make it through, there's a lot of things we have to go through, what we call the SLIP technique: stop, look, investigate, plan. But you don't have, you have to wait a year before it comes around again to try that new plan out. Maybe there's a little bit we could say around other holidays that you could, potentially utilize those skills. But that end of the year, that Halloween, and then Thanksgiving, and then Hanukkah, Christmas is really a stress test challenge. And so, since we do have a 365-day rotation around the sun, it's also not surprising that it sometimes takes 2 years, as well as sometimes people have very challenging emotional anniversaries. I remember a patient who came in to see me where we first met when I was working with Trinity, and she stayed for 6 months and for phase 1, and we really asked her to do another 6 months just because it's a good idea. Little did we know that in the holiday season, it was the anniversary of her husband's loss. So she went into this holiday season and then came back around March of the next year, and she had regained everything, and everything was back to where it was. And I said, I'm sorry that happened, but I'm glad you're back. But she expressed to us, Dr. Tom, I didn't tell you, I lost my husband Christmas, and I just wasn't ready for it. Now, if we were there with her through that, we might not have been able to completely completely mitigate,
Right.
but we probably could have helped quite a bit.
Right.
And so I really urge people, stick with your program, your coaching, think about it, even if you vary them, but 2 years is typically the amount of time it takes to maintain a real lifestyle change before it becomes autopilot.
I actually agree with. I understand that point because I see it all the time in the fitness industry that people are consistent with it, and then life happens and they fall off. And I always try to encourage everybody, even if you could only make it into the gym once a week or something, just at least get in there, get those endorphins going, get yourself feeling good again, and then you can get yourself on that routine. Speaking of routines and whatnot, in terms of healthy habits, how do you think the pandemic has kind of impacted the world in a positive way? Do you think it's positive or negative with the pandemic?
Ooh, well, let me try to stay with a positive thought first, because it's so easy to go down the negative route, right?
True.
You know, I do think, I mean, keeping in mind that, admittedly, the reason I went full time with Reality Meets Science is that I really saw that the future in health has to leverage, if not obviously completely used, because we always are going to need to be around real people. I hope we don't forget that. But technology is really going to help people reach expert types of programs that brick and mortar only may not be able to by itself. So when I was working in metabolic health, I could maybe see 150 new patients a year, because I mean, I saw them multiple times every 2 weeks for the first 3 months, and then monthly for the remaining months, and then monthly, even potentially for up to 2 years. So we had plenty of office visits, but they were centered on these certain number of patients. And that's what defines intensive lifestyle intervention. It means a lot of time is spent. And so as I started to think, the 5 keys work great clinically, but can they work digitally so that we can reach more people? And maybe we won't be as impactful for any single person as much as a hand-built car, but if we can reach more people, that could have a wider society impact. So I built a prototype product that I think you're aware of, the Diabetes Prevention Masterclass, and I put all 5 keys together on a 14-hour offering and product that people can watch at their convenience. And then they join a private Facebook community where we spend weekly time doing Q&A. So it really took a prototype of the model that was learned in clinical medicine and put it into the so-called, commercial world for highly motivated people. And I think that is one of the things from the pandemic, is that people have become much more comfortable with tech. Now, I hope not too comfortable. I don't want to live in the matrix. Blue pill or red pill? If you remember the movie that I'm talking about. But I do think that's a plus. On the other end of the spectrum, I mean, we have pretty good evidence now that about 40% of people gained significant weight during the stay-at-home orders.
I can see that.
And then the amount, Coach, is staggering. And I've seen it, and I thought to myself, is it possible that am I just seeing the exceptions to the rule? But it's about a 29-pound weight gain on average for those 40% who gained a lot. I mean, we saw from digital tracking, speaking of tech, of movement, physical activity tended to drop about 5%. But man, when you're talking about a country that's already pretty sedentary, now some people got more active, that's true, but on average we dropped. And many of us, I can't lie, I wouldn't want to. I gained 17 pounds. So I was I'm down about 12 of it now, but I gained between the quarantine 15 and the COVID-19, I gained exactly right in between, 17. And that's me. I could have easily blown up 50 pounds. I used to weigh over 200 pounds. I'm only 5'7", and I know I could have. Thank God for the 5 keys. It helped me. But still, that while below average, the amount that's been gained by some is really, really a challenge. So I can say there's positive, I hope, in terms of accommodating more to digital technology that can help people. And then I'd have to say, honestly, looking at the data, there's a lot of challenges, and I hope that we've learned from, if we go through a pandemic like this again, how we can thread the needle and find where reality meets science, so that we can gain protection of those that are vulnerable, but not necessarily make so many in society less healthy in the process.
Yes, it's and I'm the same way, because not the same way, but my point is I struggled. We all struggled through that pandemic. I mean, there was so many unknowns, and the first thing when people are unsure of what's going on, the external environment, everybody's going to gravitate towards food. Nobody was going anywhere the first couple of months in the pandemic, and then people get into this habit, unfortunately, of, yeah, well, I'll do something about it later on. And then unfortunately realize, now, I don't want to say it's too late, but it takes that much harder to get back into that routine. And, that's what I've been trying to focus on with our clients, to try to make sure everybody stays consistent with what they're doing. And that's a very challenging thing as a coach, or even a doctor, to stress that to our clients and patients, to understand what that really means. We can tell everybody all the information we want, but again, it's up to them and how they interpret it, and how we can show them empathy, and help them understand this is what needs to get done. Here are the tools. We talked about your new course in the private Facebook group. I think that sounds wonderful. That sounds
Yeah.
wonderful.
And as you stated, and what we both do is to remind them, you're not alone. I mean, we're even saying that Coach Jordan and Coach Tom, we're telling you, you're not alone, even us. So believe me, that's one thing we can just put to rest. You're not alone, and you've got great, compassionate places to come to for help. So I do think that the expansion of the already gold standard brick and mortar, go to some place, complemented by technology, makes it so that people will have a choice, and that can be helpful. But no question, it is, I hope I can try to balance what I'm about to say here well, but because I'm been dealing with it myself, that it is much easier to gain weight than to lose weight.
Correct.
That the human body is designed to get it and capture it. It's waiting for the next famine. But we're not going to have if we do have any type of famine, we've got bigger problems to worry about. But these, I want to make it clear. I said, oh yeah, I'm down 12 of the 17 pounds. These last 5 are going to be more challenging than the first 12. Yes. They are like comparing rooks to pawns in chess. You can't compare piece to piece. Pawns are very easy to kill off. Try killing off a rook or a bishop, or a knight or a queen. It gets harder as the chess game goes on. So I don't want to claim that, oh yeah, it's no problem, I'm going to lose the other 5. No, I'm challenged. It's challenging me. So you're not alone, and the type of support that you can get in accountability through, whether it's on site and what you're doing with CrossFit, or it's a master class and it's online, or it's both, by the way, because they're both perfectly compatible. We encourage people to find a site that would be very similar to yours, that they feel comfortable with, and provides a warm, a welcoming atmosphere to accentuate that accountability and physical activity key at the same time. And then typically, when you're doing well in one or other keys, it has spin-off effects, because of course their mind matters will feel better, right? And they typically then start to make better food choices, because they're like, well, if I went and I moved that much and I exercised, maybe I don't want to necessarily have my 5% fun zone now. I can be like that guy Larry and say, well, maybe next week.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's you gotta, and I've said this for years. When you think to yourself, I'm gonna wait until next week, and that is it. But like you said before, that was great. But the reality is, if you're gonna do something, you need to do it now. Don't wait for, I'm gonna wait till next week after the big birthday party or whatever, and then I'm gonna wait, and then as you know, it just keeps adding on. So
that's true.
I always say, take advantage of the resources you have, and the accountability, and the people to help you get to where you're at. Don't try to do it yourself, because it's very hard to do it yourself.
Yeah, it is. It really helps to have that accountability. So yeah, and I was talking about next week in terms of an indulgence, but absolutely, when it comes to health, don't wait, because whether you want to come out of the gate flying, or you want to come out of the gate and be more of the tortoise than the hare, the best time was yesterday. The second best time is right now. Okay. Yeah. And since you can't go back to yesterday, right now is the best time. And, every little bit counts. I guess one of the myths is that, you have to have this all or nothing. You have to have this. And for some people, you know what? They really do. They want to come and kickstart with something that's very intensive, with dedication to all 5 keys, hitting the gas at once. But that's not necessarily what will work for everyone. Sometimes just knowing that there are 5 keys is enough. Picking one thing could be physical activity, because then a lot of things can spin off from there. It could be food. It could be that, you know what? I'm really going to get into meditation and get into, an app for meditation, because I need to get stress management or my sleep under control. I have been sleeping for 4 hours. I've got undiagnosed sleep apnea. We haven't talked about that a lot, but stress management and sleep health are a big part of Mind Matters. Anything, wherever you start, it'll start growing from there. But as you said, Coach, just start.
That actually goes right into my two more quick questions. Goes right into my question. What did you do to recalibrate on that subject?
Well, I have to be honest with you. It takes for me as a binger, a lot of what helps me recalibrate is momentum with food, because when I start to break out of my healthy center of gravity, even my taste buds change. There's something called taste bud rehab. You're probably aware. If you stay away from sugar or salt long enough, you come back.
I'm not. If I cut my sugar out, I literally cut out all processed sugar for 16 days. No processed sugar. Wow! I went back and I honestly think the first thing I had was a Kit Kat after 16-day no sugar thing. Oh my goodness, it was too sweet.
Overwhelming. Yes, I've had that happen with hot dogs too, or pizza. They thought it was going to be a certain experience, and then all of a sudden they felt like they were, eating a salt stick. But it can go the opposite direction. You can start to dull your taste buds again, and then it takes a while to go back. So I really had to go through the house and just say, okay, we're resetting the house. I've got to just reset back to the cupboard for where the kids' stuff is, back to the fruit on the kitchen counter, and just resetting that environment. Oh, it was because I had to reset my taste buds. I didn't need to have all that temptation sitting in front of me. That to me was a very helpful kickstart. But for anyone else, it can start just about anywhere. It can be making a date to say, you know what, I'm going to go on a walk with a friend that I really like, because unless they're talking, admittedly, my wife is like that. If she's walking with a friend and talking, or with me, but our schedules are kind of desynchronous, she can walk for 4 or 5 miles. Walking by herself, I find her coming back to the house within 10 minutes. But if she can, it has to be, again, as we started this, individualized.
I agree with that. During the pandemic, for me, I have a hard time with actual meditation, but I actually realized that working out, playing hockey, being in the boat, all of those things for me, or mountain biking, that's my meditation, because I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just focusing on what I'm actually doing. And as busy as I am with all the things I have going on, that's like the one thing I know I can count on and kind of recalibrate myself in that aspect.
Absolutely. In fact, I call it moving meditation.
Yeah, there you go. My wife Hillary, she's a yoga instructor, so she also, we actually moving meditation. It's very interesting. She would walk like a walking meditation, and actually paying attention to your actual steps, making sure that your core breathe, and actually thinking about each step. It is so not easy. It's not easy to actually think about it and actually use that as an actual meditation, if you will.
It's ironic. I'm not sure if this is necessarily a way to support what you're talking about and what your wife is doing. But I do notice, by the way, when my posture is better when I walk, my feet hurt less. There's something that's connecting the top of my body to my feet. And she could probably explain it, or a kinesia. But
the proper pelvis position, you're thinking about the proper position. You got your shoulders back. you're resetting the body.
That's right.
Exactly right.
That's right. That's right.
Last question is, what brings you joy?
Oh, no, there's no question that my children right now bring me the most joy. Now, if you're going to ask me prior to my kids, I could say that really music still brings me joy. I mean, I love playing my guitar. I used to have more time and I used to have a band, and it used to be a type of meditation for me, although I lost some hearing from it. But nevertheless, the bottom line is that for me, music and travel too, but that's intermittent, bring me joy. But my children, without a doubt, nothing comes close. Nothing comes close.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. For me, right now, my joy is doing the podcasting. I'm really having a great time with that because I'm learning a lot from all of the individuals that I've been talking with. And for you, we've known each other for about 10 years now, and I've really enjoyed, following your journey, and I look forward to following your next journey over the next 10 years.
Likewise, Coach. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thank you. And let's see. Thank you for listening. Please check out my website for more great content at jordanlovin.com.